Welcome, everybody. Let's see, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Fanbase. That's where we're kicking it tonight. Tonight's lecture by Neville Goddard from May the 10th, 1971. Step into the picture who God really is. Ooh, let me get comfortable. Let me get as comfortable as Lil Bit is. Hmm. Hey, Cyber. Sorry, Cyber. Cyber says the ads are rolling. Well, Cyber, let me say this before I start the lecture. I run ads because it helps me to pay for my StreamYard membership every month. So that's how I do it. I run the ads, I pay for StreamYard so I can stream on all these different platforms. Just so we know. So I'm not a fan of ads, but this is how we roll. Anywho, let us begin tonight's lecture. Step into the picture who God really is by Neville Goddard, May the 10th, 1971. We are told with God, all things are possible. I think anyone who believes in God would say yes to that. But then we are told God is spirit, and the Spirit of God dwells in us. I think any man who believes that should make every effort to find out who God really is, who dwells in us. He is spirit, and the Spirit of God dwells in us. This God creates all things. By him all things were made, and without him was not anything made that was made. So everything in the world, regardless of what it is, for we are told, I form the light, and I create darkness. I make the weal, and I create the woe. I am the Lord who do all these things. Well, surely we should make every effort to find out who he is. I firmly believe from my own experiences that this God of whom the Bible speaks is our own wonderful human imagination. That God and the human imagination are one. That all natural effects in the world, though they are created by the Spirit of God, are caused by Spirit. So, every natural effect has a spiritual cause and not a natural. A natural cause only seems. It is a delusion of our fading, I would say, memory. For here in this world, I can't quite remember when I imagined that which is now taking place in my world. I do not recall it. I can't quite remember when I set it in notion. William Blake. But if this is law, and a law that no man can break, at some time somewhere I imagined what I am now encountering, that my present moment is not really receding into the past. It is advancing into the future to confront me, but I forgot it. And I now think it has a natural or physical cause, and it does not have a natural cause. Every natural effect has a spiritual cause, or the Bible is completely wrong. For we are told, by him all things were made without exception, and without him was not anything made that was made. And he is spirit, and the Spirit of God dwells in me. Well, if he dwells in me, I have identified him with my imagination. Only on this level. I do not remember having imagined it, but along the way I must have if this is principle. Now, let me share with you some of my experiences. We are in this room tonight, and the room at this moment is more real to us than anything in the world. It has a cubic reality because we are in it. Think of your home, you know, Your home, you know your home far better than you know this room, but your home at this moment is not as real as this room. This room now occupies reality to you, and everything else is shadowy as you think of it. Why is this real? Because you have entered it. You are in it. You occupy it. This I know from experience. Sitting in a chair, suddenly I am seeing what reason tells me I should not see. I am seeing what seems to be the interior of a home, or lying on my bed, I see the interior, or it seems to be, of a great hotel, an unoccupied suite ready for occupancy, but not occupied. It was just as vivid as any painting of a great artist. An artist would give us the impression of a three-dimensional picture. We know, for reason tells us, that it is on a flat surface. It is simply depicting three dimensions, but it is all on a flat surface. Well, while seated in the chair or lying on my bed, my consciousness follows vision. And I entered that room. I actually occupied it. I came back to where I was seated on one occasion, to where I was lying on my bed on another, and then I went back. And again, it took on cubic reality. I came back knowing exactly what I am doing, and knowing this whole thing makes no sense whatsoever to the rational mind. But I cannot deny what I am experiencing. Here I have the evidence. No one to share it with, but I have the evidence. I came back and then went back into the picture. At the moment I entered the picture, it took on cubic reality. And after doing it maybe a dozen times or more, I said to myself, I'm going to explore. This time, I'm going to go right into it and remain there and explore, which I did. So I stepped into the picture, and as it closed around me, from my bed it seemed to be 30 by 20, but when I stepped into it, determined this time to keep going regardless of consequences, it closed around me. A third of what it seemed to be as I looked at it from the bed. So 30 by 20 became 10 by 7. I found it to be a dressing room of a huge, wonderful suite ready for occupancy. No one was in it. I am the only occupant now. I came out by opening up a door. I didn't go through it by some vapor. I actually opened the door. And to myself, I was solidly real, just like the man who is talking to you now, or woman. My hand could open a door, and the door was solid and it was real. And I went through the door. I entered the corridor. It was a nice, wide corridor, dimly lit. At the end of the corridor, intersecting, it was a brilliantly lit corridor. I walked down to the very end. And when I got to the end, here is this luminous, wonderful corridor. I saw two ladies coming down the corridor. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew how it began. It began by seeing what seemed to me just a vision, like a painting. I knew that I had left my bed, my consciousness following vision, and entered the painting. And the painting took on cubic reality. Well, I knew it. So I call that a dream. Knowing it began as a dream, I said to myself, well, it still has to be a dream, but I am dreaming now awake. I'm not dreaming sleeping. I am fully awake and it is a dream. Lucid dreaming, perhaps? That's my interjection there. And I said to the ladies as they came by, ladies, this is all a dream. Well, they did exactly what any nice ladies would do. a stranger standing in a corridor and saying to them, "This whole thing is a dream," they thought they were looking at a madman. So they got as far removed from me as they could and got right next to the wall. But the wall was as solidly real as that wall. They couldn't go through it any more than I could. While looking at them, and they're frightened to death, they walked quickly by. And then I saw something hanging like a chandelier. It reminded me of an object that I had seen about 6 months before in a friend's home, and he said to me, "You can hardly tell that this thing is suspended. If you look closely, there is an almost invisible thread that connects it to the ceiling." So I looked, and I did see that very little thin thread connecting this to the ceiling. But then I was convinced. Well, it is a dream. This is a memory image of what I saw in my friend's home. So again, I said to the ladies, "Look, this must be all gossamer." But as I held it, it was solidly real. It was just as solid as this. Whatever you're sitting on is solid. Well, that surprised me. They kept on moving, and they moved rapidly towards the end, and here I am holding this thing in my hand. I took my hand off and I said to myself, "Now, you know it began as a dream, Neville, and this still has to be a dream. All ends run true to origins, and the origin of this experience of yours was a dream. So this must be a dream." But it is not a dream. I am just as awake as I am now talking to you, and as I was talking to those ladies. When they got to the end, they looked back at this mad person. In their eyes, I was mad, and they simply disappeared by stepping down a few steps into what undoubtedly was the great reception room, the foyer of a huge big hotel. Then I said to myself, how are you going to get back? How are you going to get back? There's no road leading back to that bed on which you left a body. You have unfinished business. You have a wife and an uneducated daughter who has the ambition to go to college, and she's now only in high school. And you have left inadequate funds to take care of your obligations to your wife and daughter. You've got to get back. How to get back? I couldn't go through that door that led from the suite of rooms into the corridor and find any exit from there back to where I lived in Beverly Hills. What on earth am I going to do? I knew reason told me that if I don't get back within a very short time, they will find that body on the bed and they will have to examine it. And they will declare it a heart attack or something. But they have got to find a physical cause for it. And here I am looking at something entirely different. It will die, all right, if I don't get back. I must get back. Then I remembered a similar experience that happened years before. Then feeling brought me back. Feeling awoke me in a dream. I found myself on a beach. It wasn't Barbados. It was more like the Pacific Islands. I have not been there, but I have been born in the tropics, so I knew exactly what they must look like. But it was not the West Indies. It was the East Indies. And here I know I am dreaming. I thought to myself, I wonder if I held a physical object and forced myself to wake, if I would wake. So I tried it. I held on to a pile driven into the beach there, a solid mass of cement. As I held it, I said, I'm not going to let go. I'm going to awake right here. So I held it. And as I held it, I said, come on, awake. You know you're dreaming. And I felt myself come to, as a person comes to when they're waking in the morning. I awoke and there I am, completely awake, wading in the water, holding on to this object. Then I went back towards the beach, and a strange, peculiar animal approached me, and it scared me. I got back through fright, and I awoke in that water through feeling. Now, I am not afraid of what I'm doing. My only concern is to get back and take care of my obligations in life, which is my wife and my daughter. Now, how to get back? I'm not afraid, I said. I can't frighten myself because I'm not afraid. But I thought feeling would do it. So I closed my eyes and I imagined that my head was on a pillow and that I could feel the pillow. And then after a little while, I opened my eyes. I'm still standing in the corridor. I tried it again. And then by the third time, as I tried it, I could feel something under my head. I allowed that to remain. Then suddenly I could feel it. I tried to open my eyes, and I couldn't this time. Instead of standing as I am now, perpendicular, I feel I am lying horizontally. So I felt, well, I must be back now, but I couldn't move my body. The body was cataleptic, and I'm frozen like this. Then, in about, maybe 20 seconds or so, I could move this little finger. I couldn't open my eyes. In a little while, I could move from the elbow down, and then with tremendous effort, I could move the arm. And I pushed it out to feel the warm body of my wife. Well, then I knew I was back, but I hadn't yet been able to open my eyes. Then, with a tremendous effort, I could open the lid and see the familiar objects in the room that I had left behind me. Then I knew what makes everything real in this world. The Spirit of God dwells in me, and He is my own wonderful human imagination. I walked into a thing that I could only see lying upon my bed. Entering that state, it took on a cubic reality. God made this world real by entering it. Well, as we are told, He is not only translucent, well, I would say in a translucent manner, we are told He is above all. He is also through all, and He is in all. If He is through all, He is omnipresent. If He is in all, He is immanent. Then I am told He dwells in me. He is in me. He is in you. He is in everyone. And now I confined. Am I now confined to this little space here at the podium? I'm not. I proved that night. I have proved it unnumbered times since. I am not actually confined to where this body is. I dwell in it. And He who dwells in it is the Spirit of God. And the Spirit of God is my imagination. I have proven to my own satisfaction that my imagination can travel. I don't have to stand here and think of my home. I can stand here and penetrate my home, leaving the body here as I did on the bed. And penetrating the home becomes a cubic reality, as it will tonight when I take this body home and enter my door. The house is a cubic reality. But must I wait until I get home tonight in this body to give it that? Can I not now, knowing who God is spirit, and He is now encased in this little garment of flesh, but He is spirit, and I have discovered He is my own wonderful human imagination. So when man dies, he cannot die. Only the garment that he wears can die. But that being that he really is all imagination. And as he enters, wherever he enters, it takes on cubic reality. That I have proven. The immortal you cannot die. Well, it did not begin. So when you leave this world because you are all imagination, the very moment that you depart, you are in some state. But you being there, you give it cubic reality. That world is just as real as this world. It's terrestrial, just as this world is. And no one in this world can die. Everything dwells in your own wonderful human imagination. The purpose now is to awaken that being in you so he is fully conscious at all times. That is the purpose of life. He who came down and took upon himself the weaknesses and the limitations of this garment and confined himself to it is destined to awake while he walks this earth. And by this earth, I mean this earth to the senses. But it does not end where my senses cease to register it. It doesn't terminate at the point called death, because the being in it goes on, and he is still in the world. But his entrance into that state gives it a cubic reality, just like this room now has, because we are in it. Now, come down to a practical use of this law, because this is so. Your dream now is shadowy. You would like to be other than what you are. I think everyone does in this world. It's a form of growing and growing, and we grow and we outgrow. So you would like to be it. But to those who are not in their dream, it's shadowy, a mere possibility. But to those who enter into the dream, it seems the only substance. A man now, a man who is now poor and embarrassed because of his poverty, he can still dream, and a dream of wealth, dream of security, but it's a shadowy state. It is something that seems to him almost impossible if he's going to use reason. And he'll say, how is this thing possible? Because I have no background either intellectually or financially or socially to even hope to achieve that sort of thing. But if he knows who he really is, the Spirit of God, who creates all things, dwells in him, and that he can detach that indwelling being from the body that he wears and actually enter his dream. The dream will take on reality. And if he persists in it, it will objectify itself in this world. I know that from many problems that I have had. When I was told that I could not do this or I could not do that, having remembered experiences that were all mystical, I applied them to practical things, and they work just as well in the practical state. I entered into my dream. It was a dream. When I was in the army, I couldn't get out, but I wanted to get out, and I wanted to get out honorably. I did not wish to be dishonorably discharged. I wanted to go through this world as a very honest, I would say, clean, wholesome American citizen, and not then ask the question, were you ever in the army? And then they say, were you honorably discharged? And have to say, no, I was dishonorably discharged. I didn't want that on my record. So I would not run away from the army. I wanted out of it, and to get out of it before the end of the war, and to get out of it honorably. So I took the same lesson that I had learned and I applied it to that. So while in the army, I assumed that I am in my home in New York City, 2,000 miles away. I was in Camp Pope, Louisiana, and I had an apartment in New York City in Washington Square. So going to bed physically at Camp Pope, I went to bed in imagination in my home in New York City. Not there on furlough, not there on some little escape, but there honorably discharged. Then I got off my imaginary bed, walked all through my apartment, and saw everything that I would see if I were there. It took on cubic reality. When I awoke the next morning, I was still in Camp Pope, Louisiana. But that night, a strange thing happened to me. It was 4:15 in the morning, and here a sheet came before my eyes. And on this sheet, a hand appeared from here down, holding a pen, and the pen wrote, "That which I have done, I have done. Do nothing." First of all, the voice said that, but the pen scratched out my disapproval, for I applied for a discharge, and my colonel disproved it. He said, "Disallowed," and signed it Colonel Theodore Bilbo Jr. That was his name, which is on a record. You can look it up, for he was the one who disallowed my application for discharge. And the hand simply scratched it out. And over that it wrote in approved. This hand holding a pen. Then the voice said to me, "That which I have done, I have done. Do nothing." What did he do? He scratched out the colonel's disapproval and he wrote in approved. And then I awoke. But 10 days later, I was honorably discharged by that same colonel. And he shook my hand. And as I left that base, he said, "I will see you after the war is over." I said, "All right, Colonel, thank you very much." And that very night, I was on a train back to my place in New York City. That's how it works. I know from my own personal experience. I am sharing with you what I have experienced both in the world of Caesar and in the world that is transcendent, something entirely different. So when I speak of being born from above, I'm not theorizing. I am telling you exactly what happened to me. When I speak of meeting the Son of God who calls me Father, I am telling you exactly what happened to me. When I tell you I ascended into heaven like a fiery serpent, as told in Scripture, that's exactly what happened to me. When the dove descended upon my hand and then smothered me with love, kissing me all over my face, my neck, my head, I know exactly what happened because it happened to me. So I am only sharing with you, not theory, not speculation, but only what I know from my own experiences. So tonight, the most impossible thing in the world, and who's not confronted with it? I am an almost impossible thing that I have to actually deny the evidence of my senses and apply my principle towards that event. I know it could not have happened. Nothing happens by natural causes. Nothing in this world happens by a natural cause. It's all spiritual. Well, you may say, and the world will say, it happens because you did so and so over a period of time, and that is the cause of your present physical ailment. It isn't so at all. You admire someone intensely and try to duplicate their every act in this world, and you wish you were just like them. And they depart this world by a similar experience and never once did the physical things that you are accused of having done that are the cause of what is happening to you. Never for one moment did it ever occur to her, the one she admired, to actually do for one moment what this one suffering from the identical thing is now suffering. And the world will say, you're suffering from it because of a physical cause. Had you not done for 40 years what you have done, it could not happen. But yet, her own loving mother that she worshiped beyond anyone in this world and tried so much to emulate never once in her life smoked a cigarette. Well, she would take an occasional little drink, but very sweet, very weak, and died of the very thing that she now is suffering from. There was no one in this world that she worshipped more than her mother. That imaginal act is the beginning of time. And the whole thing came forward. And now she is fulfilling completely her ideal to be just like her mother. Mhm. And the world will tell me that the thing that is happening to her is caused by a physical state. It isn't so at all. I could duplicate that and multiply it by the unnumbered number if man only had a memory that could retain the imaginal acts of the past. Every natural effect has a spiritual cause and not a natural. A natural cause only seems. It is a delusion of the perishing vegetable memory. William Blake from Milton. If man could only bear in mind that every simple little imaginal act sends a quiver through omniscience, right through omnipotence, and right through immanence. So the whole thing is like a huge big computer. Your imaginal act instantly is added to the sum total of it all. And instantly the whole thing is changed. And the world is reflecting every imaginal act in this world of man and keeping it all perfectly recorded so that there is no such thing as a natural cause. It is all a spiritual cause. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. And where does he dwell? He dwells in us, for he is spirit, and the Spirit of God dwells in us. He dwells in us, and I have, by experiment, discovered what that spirit is. And I tell you from my own experience, the Spirit of God and the human imagination are one, they are not two. So when you depart this world, your reality, which is the Spirit of God, is your own wonderful human imagination, and that gives cubic reality to everything in this world if you enter it. Now, the secret is to enter it. Can I enter the state of my wish fulfilled? Those other states were simply experiments. Can I enter the state of the wish fulfilled? I have done it. On several occasions, I have. When it seemed essential, I did it. If someone asked of me, I tried my best to do it. And how do I do it? By feeling. As we are told in the 17th chapter of Acts, happy is the man that feels after him and finds him. He is speaking now of God, for in him we live and move and have our being. He has just got through speaking to the Athenians. He said, O men of Athens, I see that you are very religious. But I notice over your temple an inscription to the unknown God. Now the one you worship is Now the one you worship as unknown, I will reveal to you. For he is not a God afar off. He is near, that you may feel after him and find him. For in him we live and move and have our being. So the God of whom I speak is never so far off as even to be near. For nearness implies separation. No matter how near he is, that's not the God. He can't be near because I am he. Be still and know that I am God. That is what you're told in the 46th Psalm, the 10th verse. Be still. Why? That you may know I am He. I am God. So the fundamental sin of Scripture is the lack of faith in I am He. As you are told, you will die in your sins. That is, you will die missing the mark, unless you believe I am He. And before the world, and before that the world was, I am. Before Abraham was, I am. So I am can't be near. That's the core of my being. I can say, I am a man, and that's something near. I have a hand. Well, that is near. I am rich. That is near. I am poor. That is near. But before I can say anything, I must first establish the sense of being, and that is, I am. So I must first be before I can be anything in this world. And so the lack of faith in that reality is the fundamental sin. So I must first be before I can be anything in this world. And so the lack of faith in that reality is the fundamental sin. So here I share with you what I have discovered. I have discovered that your own wonderful human imagination is the Spirit of God, and that you can enter any state in this world, and on entrance, it ceases to be a flat surface depicting reality. It is reality. Why? Because you are the reality who dwells in it. Wherever you are, things are real. If you are not in it, then they are not real. They go to their flat surfaces. And all things exist in the human imagination. We are called upon to select that state in which we will dwell, the state that we will enter and make real in our world. And I do so by simply feeling. What would the feeling be like were it true? How would I feel were it true? And how would I see the world were it true? Then I feel myself into that state and try to give it all the tones of reality, all the sensory vividness that I can. If I can give it sensory vividness and the tones of reality, even though I do not see it, it will work. But sometimes it becomes so vivid and so intense, you do see it. The whole thing opens. Your eye opens, and the whole thing is real. And then you are in an entirely different world, the world of your dreams. For because you entered it, it is real. But whether the eye opens or not, it will still work, may I tell you. This is the law spoken of in Scripture. And because no creator in the world exists but God, He is the only one. He has to create good and evil. If there is good and evil, God does it. If there's darkness and light, God did it. He said, I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal, and none can deliver out of my hands. We think a devil kills and God makes alive, that the devil wounds and God heals. It's God who kills and God who wounds, and God who makes alive and God who heals. There is only God. Read it in the 32nd chapter of Deuteronomy. I, even I, am He, and there is no God beside me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal, and none can deliver you out of my hands. and none can deliver out of my hands. And the God spoken of in that scripture is seated here in everyone who is seated. For that one in you is the Spirit of God. And the Spirit of God is your own wonderful human imagination. So blame no one in this world for anything that befalls you. It's too late to share with you an experience of mine last Sunday morning, but I will on Friday. I asked for it. I woke at 1:30, and thinking of many things concerning my dear wife, I asked for some wonderful experience now and then fell asleep. And it came in the most glorious manner while I was waking at 6:15. I ran straight to my yellow pad and wrote the whole thing down. It was the most vivid experience in answer because I wove myself into an experience. It had to take place. Because I wove myself into an experience, it had to take place. What experience it would be, I left it in the depths of my own being to decide that. But give me some wonderful experience this night in answer to something, and then came the most glorious experience. And then I wrote the whole thing down. It's too long to tell tonight. I will tell you on Friday if you're here. Or, whether you are here or not, I will tell it on Friday. Mm. Here's a question, because there's questions at the end of this lecture. What is the difference in the reality factor between the body on the bed and what they call astral projection? Is there a difference? Neville responds, well, I have had out of body experiences of what the world would call astral projection, but they are not anything like this. I am convinced that the thing that you really are is dreaming what you believe yourself to be. One day, you will awake. One day, you will awake, and you and the dreamer of you will be one. I have seen myself out of this body many times, but it is not that of which I speak today. Hmm. Here's one final question. It says, another lady asked him, if you have time, Neville, I would love to hear again the story that you told about an experience you had in the past where you tried to get through a wall and you couldn't get through it. Neville responds, that was really an astral projection. I was living in my hotel room in New York City, and I felt this peculiar force in my head, and I moved out in a circular motion, or rather, a spiral motion, and I found myself on the beach. I didn't know anyone, but I knew I had just left the body on the bed in New York City. Well, I was more curious about how that thing happened than about the people on the beach. They meant nothing to me. So I inwardly wished to return and duplicate it, but this time not to go to the beach, but to actually come down in the room and observe the body out of which I had just spun. So I had no sooner wished it than I came back into the body, and I am in the body, and I am not in the body. But now the same motion is taking place, the same intensity. But this time, as I whirled out in a spiral motion, I willed myself to come back into that room and not go elsewhere. I wanted to see exactly how this thing works. So I came into the hotel room, and there was the body on the bed. The face is covered with a cloud. There are breaks in the cloud, and through the breaks in the cloud, I can see my face, but only through breaks in the cloud. And here I am looking at this thing. I called it a thing because the reality is looking at it. That which I always believed to be my reality, myself, that I shave in the morning, that I bathe in the morning, and I feed all through the day. That's only an envelope. I am the being looking at it. Well, I figured Now, if I am now out, I am spirit. Therefore, I could easily go through the wall. And so I ran towards the wall and ran at it and bumped my head. I came back and was thinking to myself, well, that's crazy. Spirit. There is the thing that should bump its head, not me. I ran again and bumped my head again. I came back and this time I said, now there must be some way that it can be done because I am spirit. I imagined myself out of that room and instantly I was where I imagined myself. The mere fact that I saw the wall as a barrier, it was a barrier to me. And so trying to go through it, I was going against my own rational mind. And so I bumped it. But when I stood in the room, not going through any wall or any door, I simply imagined myself elsewhere. And I was elsewhere. So that's how I learned that lesson, with a good bump. Now that was an involuntary projection. I have had many voluntary ones, but I'm not talking of that. That is behind me now. That is like child's play. I am speaking of God in us, who is called in Scripture Jesus Christ. For the divine body of God is your own wonderful human imagination, which is one with God, who is Jesus Christ. That's the Lord. And may I tell you in the end, although all these bumps and these horrors of the world, in the end, He is infinite love. He appears at first as power, destructive, violence, but in the end, it was love behind it all. Just sheer love. Nothing but love in the end. And that is God. And there concludes the Neville Goddard lecture. Step into the picture, Who God Really Is, by Neville Goddard, May the 10th, 1971. I'm going to read you that last piece right there. That last piece that says, well, I figured. Now, if I am now out, I am spirit. Therefore, I could easily go through the wall. And so I ran towards the wall and ran at it and bumped my head. I came back and was thinking to myself, well, that's crazy. Spirit. There is nothing. There's this thing that should bump its head, not me. I ran again and I bumped my head again. I came back and this time I said, now there must be some way that it can be done because I am spirit. I imagined myself out of that room and instantly I was where I imagined myself. Now, I will give you my interjection here. Because as I mentioned to you before, I narrate these PDFs with the astral realm, people who've gone through near-death experiences, so on and so forth. And their explanation for the astral realm is everything happens instantaneously. You have to know what it is. You're the one who has to give the directive, which means, just like he said, he imagined himself out of the room. And instantly, where he imagined himself, that's where he ended up. Now, if you've read the Emerald Tablets by Thoth the Atlantean, he says the same thing. He says, hold a thought-formed image in your mind, and that's where you'll be instantly. Why would I tell you those things? Because this lecture triggered those memories from what I had read. So he's saying in his astral form, because she asked about astral projection, and then she asked him about how How come he couldn't get through the wall? Here's the answer. The mere fact that I saw the wall as a barrier, it was a barrier to me. The mere fact that I saw the wall as a barrier, it was a barrier to me. And so, trying to go through it, I was going against my own rational mind. And so I bumped into it. What is he? And this is why Neville always says, your senses are going to tell you, well, that's not possible. That thing that you're wanting to create, that state that you want to be in, that's not possible. That's what your senses will tell you. Your senses say, we don't have any hard evidence. But the mere fact, if you see it as a barrier, it has to be a barrier. So this is why when he tells you, or when the scripture says to you, as a man thinketh, therefore he is, as a man thinketh, therefore he is. This is why you're always right. If you believe that thing of yourself, it has to be true. You can't be made a liar of. You believe it to be true of yourself, so it is true. If you don't believe it to be true of yourself, then it will not be true. So when you are going through the world and you're saying things like, oh my God, this is so hard, this is so challenging, I'm never gonna. The mere fact that you see something as a barrier, it has to be a barrier to you. Right? So sometimes I know we get caught up in wanting to bring about changes in our world, money, house, car, spouse. Natural. We live in the world of Caesar. Those are all natural. But don't think for one moment that you can get away from. What do you think about yourself? He's telling you that God is in you, God is in me. That's what he's telling you. And you see that part for us? What did he call it? He was going against his own rational mind. The rational mind says, how can God be in me? That's what the rational mind says. How can God possibly be in me? So, how are you going to reconcile that? How are you going to accept? He tells you how to accept it. He tells you to test it. Because all things are possible to that which is within you. And you know there's something in you. Oh, yeah, you know it is. I don't have to tell you there's something in you. You know there is. You had to bury somebody? You know something's missing. What's missing? They are. So you know there's something in you. But the rational mind would want to tell us, ain't nothing in it. That's just air in your lungs, girl. So he told you how he did it. He wanted to get out of the army. So he lay on his army bed and he put himself, remember that exercise? He would sit in the living room and then he would see the telephone in the hallway from where he was sitting in the living room in his mind's eye. He'd see it from there. He'd go out there in his mind and then he would come back. So what's he telling you? He said, at first it looks like a painting. The state that you want to occupy looks like a painting. It looks flat. You know how a painting looks. It looks flat. But the minute you put yourself in it, it now takes on cubic reality. Without you, there is no reality, is what he's saying. Without you, there is no reality. I am is the reality. So tonight, as you rest your head on your pillow, become curious. I want to experience the spirit that is within. He tells you your hand is your hand, but your hand could be near you or far from you. But the spirit is neither near nor far. It is in. It's in you because it is you. So allow your curiosity to be stirred up and get to know yourself. I'm not talking about the reflection you see in the mirror. That's just your reflection, but there's something that is holding you up there so you can see yourself in the mirror. There's something that's holding you up. For instance, there's something that's getting this voice out to you tonight. It's not the internet. Because with or without the internet, the voice is still here. So what's powering my voice? I am. So you see, there is no reality unless you are in it. So the state that you want to occupy, he mentioned rich, poor, healthy. It is only a state. And that's what you practice doing, moving yourself in and out of states. So, Yoda Burger. Yoda Burger made a comment. He says, the Indian said, let's go catch some fish. The white man said, let's try to catch some fish. Who ate? The person who did. Not the one who tried, but the person who did. Because as Yoda always says, do or do not. We don't try. Right? Hey, Ultra, Marjorie, Sugar Visions. Hey, Cyber. I see you all here on Twitter and YouTube. I see you all. Who's on Fanbase tonight? Let's pop in and see. Marquise and Jeannie Flo Smiles. Hey, KZ. Miss Deborah, Afternoon Delight is in the house, and Emzo. It is brilliant to see you all tonight. It really, really is. I trust tonight that it made sense that there isn't a reality without you. You, it's all you. And you hear what he said? We forget the seeds that we plant. So that when our harvest comes in, we're like, what in the Sam Hill is this? This isn't mine. Oh, yes, it is. But there's no judgment there. He tells you to occupy the state. You can look at the state, but nothing is alive in it. It's just there waiting. He said, like what? A hotel room waiting for somebody to slide their card key, click in the door, and go, oh my God, I can put my feet out. Well, that's you. How do you occupy the state? What would it feel like? What would it feel like if you were the person you said? What would that feel like in your body? You know exactly what it feels like because you know what it feels like when you say, oh my God, I can't do that. I don't know how to do it. You know exactly what that feels like in your body. It doesn't feel very nice. But what if you said, well, all things are possible and spirit dwells in me, and God is my own what? Wonderful human imagination. Indeed. I can do nothing, but the Spirit does it. Just like I say, I have this mouth, but if Spirit does not animate my mouth to shape and form these words, nothing is ever said. So who's speaking? The Spirit is. I trust this helps you tonight. You know, you can always replay. I thank you all for being here and just showing up every night. I love you guys. So rest well tonight. And don't be scared. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's you. You can, like, I dare you. If you lift up your hand, my hand is sitting here on the ottoman next to me. If I pick up my hand, well, that's natural, isn't it? I can pick up my hand. I can lift my arm up and I can look at my palm and turn it over and look at the other side of my hand. I can look at my hand. I'm holding my phone. But my hand is holding my phone, but who is powering me to hold the phone? That's what I'm saying to you tonight. Remember that little thing we read? The realization and the recognition or the record of the indwelling Spirit within you. That's what it is. That powers you and moves you. And that's why when you say, because think about it. You can open your mouth and voice your desire. You can open your mouth and say, oh my God, I would love ... That's all you can do is open your mouth to voice your desire. But where did the desire come from? The desire came from the Spirit that dwells within you. So if the desire has come from the Spirit that dwells within you and not from some faraway place and some stranger, well, then all things are possible. So if Spirit is the thing that caused you to open your mouth and voice your desire, well, then God is not a man that he should lie. He's the one who gave you the desire. So he's the one who was what? Faithful to complete it. He who began a good work in you. So what we hoping for? Hope? That's somebody's name last time I checked. But the Spirit that dwells within you does not function on hope. It creates all things. Nothing that is made couldn't have been made unless Spirit made it. So tonight, you are simply along for the ride. I'm speaking to me. The thing that you want to experience in your world, that desire did not just fall out of the sky like a wayward snowflake. Spirit whispered that desire, put it in your heart. So, cause and effect. If Spirit whispered the desire, the effect is what? You've got to experience it. So then, what do you got to do? You've got to get out of your way. How do you get out of your way? What did he say? He said, the mere fact that I saw the wall as a barrier, then it had to be one. So, you know, all of our book learning tells us that's not possible. Those things aren't real. That's just your imagination. You know, all that book learning. That's what it tells us. But you see,
more like book programming.
Exactly.
I was over here thinking, how lucky did I have to be in existence at the same time as Angela?
You got me here cracking up, waking up my chicken. You just give us strength, Lord. Oh, snap. But look, we have got to accept the fact that there's the spirit within us. You see, something clicked for me tonight where Neville said, because he was talking about the woman who admired somebody so much that the same thing that woman died from, the woman who admired her, she died from the same thing. And then I was like, oh, snap. Well, that would make perfect sense because that was the state she entered into. But then only because she believed it, she was just so, based upon what I read. And what clicked for me tonight is something that was said to me a lot in my childhood. And when I read that phrase in the lecture, I was like, oh, holy snap. That's what that is? Yes. The mere fact that I see the wall as a barrier. That was my understanding tonight. And so now I got to test it out for myself. I got to apply what I learned tonight and test it out and go from there. Ah, the well-preserved woman. Hello, beautiful. It is good to see you. It is very good to see you. Anyhow, listen. Get some rest tonight, because I'm going to get some rest. But remember, you lift your arm to applaud, or you lift your hand to click the like, share, and subscribe button. Who's doing that? Spirit is. So the next time you lift up your feet to walk, the next time you open your eyes to read, open your mouth to speak, whatever it is you do, know who is doing it. Spirit is. Who's that spirit? Oh, that's God in you. So the next time, it'll make you very cognizant of the things that you do. And that's why he said, if there's evil, God did it. If there's good, God did it. Because who? If I decide to pick up my hand and smack you upside the back of your head, well, God did that. So if we're looking into the world and we see evil and debauchery, and you ask that question, how could God allow such a thing to happen? Well, where is God? All right, then. Anyhow, remember, there is never judgment. Never, ever. I love each and every one of you. Rest well tonight. Oh, just because I can. Hello, James. That's my favorite name to say, so I have to say it like that. Hello, James, darling. Vashon, I see you. Emzo, Miss Deborah, Afternoon Delight. Kenny B, hook a brother up. KZ, Flo Smiles, M. Jeannie Marquise. The well-preserved woman, Yoda Burger, Ultra Darling. Marjorie, Sugar Visions, Cyber. That's everybody who attended tonight on either Fanbase, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Thank you all for being here, and I will see you on the morrow. Much love to you all.